Today we're going to talk about my SKAVEN paint scheme. A lot of our viewers ask about this scheme on the channel and have requested a tutorial. I filmed one a while ago, but it was pretty rough. Since I'm adding a new, well, very old but new to me models to my army, I figured I'd try again. Let's talk about what this scheme is. It's a style. A style doesn't attempt to simulate realism or emulate art. A style exists solely to represent the philosophy behind itself. My SKAVEN army is ashy and gross, but they love their technology and they keep their gear nice and tidy. I was inspired by a photographic technique called selective desaturation, where the whole picture is in black and white except for a few elements. The elements I want to stand out are red, warpstone green, metallic bronze, and the gray I want to have a vivid contrast between light and dark. Here's all the steps more or less in order. Prime the models black. Zenithal spray the mid-tone gray from above. Then dry brush ultramarine gray. Then pick out some details with ultramarine gray. Add in tesseract glow or moot green for anything empowered by warpstone. Edge highlight the moot green parts with yellow. Stick to only one or two colors. I chose red and bronze. Then apply blue and black ink to taste, and you're pretty much done. The models we're painting today are going to be these Packmaster models. These are Just Goodwin sculpts from a very long time ago, I think 1980 something. But they're still valid models in the EOS range, which makes me happy. The way that I did these are metal models. Mounting them on cork, metal models on cork, is hard to do if you just clip the slotta part off the bottom of the model. But if you cut it into a kind of a spiky shape and then jam that spiky shape into the cork, then it's gonna stick in there really well and they'll be like they're pinned. When you spray a mini, especially a metal mini with undercoat black or any kind of aerosol, sometimes the paint won't get into all the places. You can see how the cork base is starting to flake off a bit there. And then there's some pieces underneath here that didn't get caught, and we're gonna paint all that stuff with a brush. For this kind of work, we're not gonna use a wet palette. I usually use like a cheap plastic palette, something like this, and I reuse them a lot. So I followed an example from a really cool guy called Midwinter Minis, and I spray painted it black so I could start over and reuse my palettes. It doesn't matter, like it just has to be black on the bottom. It doesn't need to match the black out of the rattle can at all. Okay, the primer's on there. I went and got dressed because what's a painting tutorial unless the guy's wearing like a black nitrile glove? Okay, so these guys are dry. They've sat in front of my space heaters, so they're a little toasty. Let's do the airbrush time. Airbrush time. This is a cheap airbrush. That's fine because we're not winning any awards with this stuff, and it just needs work. This airbrush works. As I get the airbrush started with the stuff here, it's called the Airbrush Flow Improver. It's from Vallejo. Basically, it's a clear medium of some kind, and it has some like slight amounts of ammonia in it. It smells a little bit like Windex. And then I loosen my needle chuck and I move my needle back and forth, and I try to get the material inside of the flow. Lubricates up the airbrush a little bit and kind of makes it a little easier to clean when I first start off with color. I don't make this too much into an airbrushing tutorial. There's lots of way better videos for that. If you want to watch some good airbrush tutorials, go check out Kenny Boucher on Next Level Painting. That guy's going to teach you everything you need to know about an airbrush. He's a master. It's like, I don't know, 2 or 3 drops worth of paint. It's pretty thick. So I'm going to put the flow improver in there first. 1, 2, 3, about 3 drops worth of that stuff. And then I'm just gonna stick the paint in there and we're gonna mix it up. When I airbrush this guy, I'm gonna go for a zenithal airbrushing. So we want the bottom half of the guy to be dark and the top to be brighter. The way I achieve that is by spraying them from the top. So if you can get in there real close, you can see that there's, the model is black from underneath and then mostly gray from the very top, which is good. This is where we want it. So just to look at this miniature and let it pick out for us what we want to do with it. I know this miniature is not very finely detailed anymore, by today's standards anyways, but we're gonna point out some things. So the lash that it's using, I want that to be like a cool warpstone green. I want that to be like, he's gonna use like this this lash to empower things, which is what they do. They're a buffing unit, so they're going to empower units on the battlefield. Also, he's got like this little metal thing here. I'm going to paint that with the Warp Block Bronze. He's got a little metal clasp there, Warp Block Bronze again. We're going to paint this cowl he's wearing. It's like a hood that's down over his shoulders. We're going to paint that red. We're going to use Ultimate Gray to create highlight tones across the miniature through both dry brushing and with a little bit of brushwork. I want to introduce you to a friend of mine. This thing is what I call a dry brushing rig. This is something that I built myself out of a piece of corrugated cardboard. It works pretty simple. On the back here is where you kind of brush most of the paint off when you're doing a dry brush. I'll explain to you what a dry brush is in a second, if you don't know what that is. And over here is some sprue that I've glued down to the cardboard here. I just use super glue for this, let it dry, and then you can use it after. So the point of this thing, what this is for, is to test how thick the paint is on your dry brush when you're before you put it on the miniature. So the idea of a dry brush is that you stick it into your paint. We're going to use a very bright white color, bright gray color. So it's almost an off-white here. It's called Ultimate Gray. So we're going to stick our dry brush in this, and then we're going to get most of the paint off on the dry brushing rig. And it should tell us, the way it looks on this sprue should inform how it's going to look on the model. So we'll give it a shot. You can't just use a paper towel for white colors, because when you have a paper towel, the white goes onto it, and it's kind of hard to tell how much paint is left on the brush. So obviously you got problems there. So that's why we're going to switch to this side here, and we're just going to start dry brushing a little. Still lots of paint loaded into this brush, so I'm going to try to get it off on this little corner here. And it's getting close to be what we want it to look like. You want to be able to go over very lightly and just have the edges get picked up by the white. Alright, and you want to go from all angles on this, because if you turn your brush a little bit and there's a little bit of extra paint loaded in one corner, suddenly you'll have like a big white swath across the whole thing. So this looks pretty good, and I should only have to load this brush up once for all three of these miniatures. So we'll go through and try to get it done. For dry brushing, as I'm starting at the top and working my way down, I want the bottom of the miniature to be really dark and gloomy, and the top of the miniature to show most of the highlights. And what we're doing is just the raised edges of the miniature catching the brush, and so that's kind of a cheap way of getting highlighting done on a miniature that's basically monotone, the way we got this one here. And you notice like I'm putting a lot of brush, a lot of the paint is catching on his little pouch there, and that's going to make his pouch look brighter than the rest of the miniature, which is not what we want. So I'll have to go back and fix that with the Administrative Gray. Mechanicus Gray, that's Mechanicus Standard Gray. I'm also going to hit the camera a couple times with the brush because it's such a long handle. Ugh. You may have seen a lot of people do like a stone theme, or like a rock theme, like I've heard of Stonecast Eternals, that kind of thing. That's a style that people adopt, and one of the reasons why they do that is because it's just dog easy to achieve, and if you want to paint a lot of models really quickly and get kind of like a cheap, popping effect on them, this is how you do that. You are not putting a lot of effort in, but it looks cool. And I know it's for people who consider miniature painting an art like I do. This is a lot of like shortcut work. It's very gimmicky, but hey, it looks cool. And part of what makes our hobby great is that the spectacle of it, the way that it looks on the tabletop. As long as your army looks good, like use nail polish, experiment, use glitter, use whatever you want, make it look cool. And as long as it looks cool to you, it'll look cool to someone else as well. Maybe not to everybody, but at least to someone out there. So yes, this video is all about cheap shortcuts to get this ashy gray look. Okay, cool. We're no longer using a dollar store brush. I've switched to the Games Workshop base brush, is what it's called. It's relatively thick, but it still holds a decent point. So we're just going to use this guy to kind of do the rest here. And the same story as before, we're going to try to just put a little highlight the moments of his face that really matter. We might do his hands too, but we're going to use a little schnoz. Here we go. We're gonna do these horns as well, because these horns, like, these are dope. We should definitely emphasize the fact that this rat has horns. Like, that's not normal. Okay, so let's talk about painting white for a second. Whenever you're painting white or a light gray color, you may see this happen to your brush. That's some pigment that's drying in the tip of your brush. The white pigment dries really fast, and it's gonna make the tip of your brush splay out and do really bad things. So what we're gonna do is we're just gonna clean our brush right now. We're gonna use this stuff I like to call, it's actually called, it has a name. It's called the Masters in quotations, because like, that's thinking very highly of myself here. The Masters Brush Cleaner and Preserver. You can find this stuff in most hobby shops like Michael's or craft stores, that kind of thing, if you're in the States. And I believe you can find it online, but it's not very expensive and it's awesome. Okay, so this is what our rats look like this so far, and if you want to stop at this phase, you could just kind of go black and white and have like a black and white army, which would be kind of cool looking on the table all together. Or you can put some colors underneath it. We're going to keep going. We're going to go to the new Tesseract Glow, the technical, this is a contrast paint. Technically, I don't know, is it a contrast paint? It says technical. It's a contrast paint. And we're going to try this, and it's close enough to that moot green, and it's got the highlight that I love. So we're going to just go with this and see how it does. Okay, I'm pretty jazzed about that Tesseract Glow. It's looking really good, but the tips of the lashes have to dry, so we're gonna just kind of let that dry for a minute, and we're going to get in there with this red color. I'm going to use this contrast Blood Angels Red. Yeah, Blood Angels Red from Contrast. And just gonna use it as a glaze here. So again, we're not going to cover the whole thing like you would with like a Mephiston red or something like that. We're just trying to let the white and the highlighting we've already done show through. And we're trying to save as many steps as possible here. Here we are with the Andean yellow, which looks kind of orange out of the pot. That's okay, it dries quite a vibrant yellow. Like, it's such a pretty yellow, I kind of look for any excuse to use it. I really dig it. One thing I'd want to caution you about, when you're selecting what color you're going to use to remove your bases, if you use the same color as the base of the miniature, like I'm doing here, then the bases are going to make it look like you're going to run the risk of them looking samey and unpainted. For the little bit of mellowness on these guys, we're going to use some Warplock Bronze, which is one of my favorite colors. It's very close to a black, but it's got this slight gold metal flaking to it, which is just kind of like neat looking to me. It's very SKAVEN-y. It's okay to get the glaze around where the eye is. Then it kind of looks like it's glowing around his eye a bit. Okay, I'd like you to look at the metal components here. There's like a little medallion here, and there's a little bit of armor underneath his robe there. So what I'd like you to look at is how the light is kind of catching on the top there. We're going to use a little bit of Screaming Bell, which is a kind of a reddish gold color. Now we're going to go in and very gently highlight those metal parts where the light is catching them already. And it doesn't have to be more than a couple of dots, really. And we'll get in there real close to show you what it looks like. Almost there. We're going to introduce a little bit of blue to these guys. Alright. There we go. We're just going to kind of run it along the bottom here in the recess of his robe. I want to do the same thing back on this side. I am going to smack the camera a whole bunch more times with my brush. Now, one of the reasons we're doing this as well is to kind of complement the red on the robe. On the cowl he's wearing, and hopefully that we're just the suggestion of the blue is enough. For our last step, we're going to throw on a little bit of Nuln Oil. We're using the Citadel Shade Brush. I'm just going to throw that in over the face of the model. We want to add some more contrasty definition to his face. Not contrast paint as in contrast paint, but like contrast as in light and dark. And I also want to tone down the harsh whiteness of the what is it? The Ultra One Gray that I used to highlight his face. Maybe his finger too. A little weird. It's like he's got a white finger. I stuck my finger in something. Can you sniff it and tell me what it was? If it annoys you that I'm not using a painting handle, that's probably okay. Not that I want to annoy you. I do have a painting handle. This is what my painting handle normally looks like. Stick the guy on top there with a little bit of a blue tack. It's actually, I don't know, poster tack? I think it's poster tack because it's not blue anymore, it's white. But there's a little hobby hack for you right here. What do you do with your sharps when you're done with them? I stick them in this bottle here, and then they're safe to handle and throw away later. Not going to poke you through the garbage bag when you're taking it out. And it's not going to poke your garbage man either, which I'm sure they appreciate. And that's the video. Thanks for watching. I know they don't look very important or special or cool, but they do match the rest of the army. We're going for a style here. So most of the army is going to be in that kind of black and white scheme. And if you look around, you see that red and black, white, and gray is pretty ubiquitous with the greens and that kind of thing. So that is the key to my SKAVEN color scheme. I hope you found this video informative and that it helps you with your journey on painting lots of armies in a stylized and cool way and doing it quickly. Thanks for watching.